And welcome, viewers, to the Daily Space Weather. Coming at you from the Smash News Network, least busted name of news, this is Smash, a.k.a. Smash-a-Mash, a.k.a. Dan. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for stargazing with us as we bring you the most detailed imagery you'll find of the closest star and most comprehensive space weather in the world. We're starting out with the northwestern limb here. Some spectacular imagery there. You can see a CME happening, as well as a bunch of filaments and sunspots. So lots of stuff going on here, lots and lots of sunspots. Let's go around the horn, heading to the northwest. We've got the Eugene Bagashov filament setting over here. We've got the Zelinsky filament setting, moving right through here. Then you've got the Putin filament right here. So lots of filaments in the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. Also a polar prominence up here near the North Solar Polar region. Southwest looking like this. We've got a huge set of sunspots here setting, greatly increasing the likelihood of a major solar flare like an X or an M-class flare. So that's certainly something to comment on. And heading to the southeast, we've got the Brittany Griner filament right here, and more sunspots down there as well. So we've had a huge increase in the sunspot number now. The sunspot number approaching the radio flux number. We'll get to that here in a moment. Here is yesterday plus today in solar continuum, SDO continuum wavelength. And yeah, that is a lot of sunspots, pushing the 150 number for a number of sunspots there. We also have seen some growth up in this group here, which is at quite a high latitude also, I might add. Another indication that solar cycle 25 has got a long way to go to reach solar cycle maximum. Here's your SDO magnetogram from yesterday plus today. And next, I would remind our viewers to follow us on Twitter. If you don't have an account on Twitter, why not create a Twitter account? You'll see things nobody else gets to see. There is a link to the 12 Days of Smashmas pinned to the Twitter page. Today's the final day. We'll be releasing track number 12. It is to be announced. You can also find links below the video to our Hemp Lucid shop, so save some cash with our link, or use the promo code SMASHOMASH10 on checkout to save some cash on your last-minute holiday gift purchases. Those are the best selling. There are the 12 Days of Smashmas. If you haven't checked them out, we've released 12 pieces of original music here for the first 12 days of December. And if you enjoy the content, press like, press subscribe, press share. Perhaps support us via a Smash Team membership. There is a gold level, a silver level, a gold annual paid-up subscription level, as well as a bronze level. We send out email alerts when there are things like disasters happening. So check us out over there, smashomash.com/smashomash. We are still on Patreon. You can find links to the social media sites and so forth, all on the Smash Team page at smashomash.com/smashteam. If you've never seen it before, click posts. It'll show you what we've been up to. And thanks to everybody who's supported the channel over the years. And let's see what's going on in terms of earthquakes and volcanoes. So volcanoes first. Suno-Sejima is erupting, producing an 8,000-foot ash plume. Semeru, 14,000-foot ash plume as it explodes on the Isle of East Java. In central Mexico, Popocatépetl exploding, flight level 240 over Popocatépetl. Fuego in Guatemala exploding, flight level 150. Nevado del Ruiz, flight level 210 over Colombia. And next headed to Ecuador, where we've got 3 active volcanoes now. Sangay exploding, flight level 200. Revenador exploding, flight level 150. It's a 15,000-foot ash plume. Cotopaxi, an uptick at Cotopaxi as it's producing a 30,000-foot plume of volcanic ash as it explodes, flight level 300 over Ecuador from Cotopaxi. Sabancaya exploding, flight level 270. And Lascar in northern Chile has had the alert level raised to 2. Please do not pole vault the caldera. Next, looking at seismic activity, this is the last 90 days. That's what's been going on in terms of earth shakes. And the largest quake of the past 24 was a 6.0, likely felt at Acapulco. There is the location of that. 6.0 magnitude quake, which occurred at 14:31 yesterday Universal Time. And let's scroll up the list here. Let us know if we miss anything. Keep in mind, any earthquake can be a foreshock. We had an interesting quake there in Arctic Canada. Also, Guatemala had a 5.2 at nearly 200 kilometers depth there. That Guatemalan quake. And we're just going to let her scroll here, citing anything over a 5 magnitude. So things kind of calm here, actually, over the past 24 hours, despite that 6 in Mexico. And let's continue on to our space weather coverage. So here is the last 24 in the house favorite wavelength, 171 angstroms. Just spectacular imagery, and let's take a look at 304 plus 193 angstroms, which is where we started out with our around the horn imagery. This great composite series of images from SDO includes ionized helium and ionized iron. It's great at showing filaments. It's good at showing coronal holes. It shows the extended corona. You can also see bright areas there where we have active regions and sunspots and so forth. And let's break down some more information here. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux is at 148 solar flux units, a bit above the 81-day average. There it is in context on Solon.info, and you can see the sunspot number here exceeding 140 sunspots as it approaches the radio flux number, which it hasn't actually done that since October. Back around the 10th of October. You can see it's only exceeded the radio flux a couple times throughout the solar cycle. So a big uptick there in solar activity continues. Likelihood of major solar flares becoming very high as those large sunspot groups set in the southeast especially. We do also see a continued high-speed coronal hole wind stream taking a surprisingly long time to subside here. Really, it should subside any minute. And NOAA not forecasting any geomagnetic unrest or space weather storms in the coming 3 days. That's the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard if you want to check it out yourself. And next we'll look at the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. That depicts magnetohydrodynamic pressure. The units are nanopascals. And it is a model based on the Space Weather Modeling Framework. If you ever want to read about it, click on Details. This tab right down here. You'll find a link to the Space Weather Modeling Framework. You can download all the software and learn about how it is calculated. Next, the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. Our ground geospace magnetosphere, our ground magnetic perturbations map, rather. The scale here is nanotesla. Nanotesla are the units. Again, the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space, pretty calm. Like the KP index, which is barely above zero. KP 0.67 is the current global geomagnetic K-index, the planetary K-index, a measurement of global geomagnetism. And let's move to the real-time solar wind. So we're seeing the solar wind sputtering a little bit here. You can see the fluctuations happening in the temperature. That's typically what you would see at the end of a coronal hole high-speed stream. Current conditions are still pushing 500 kilometers per second there at 494. Solar wind density still slightly elevated here at 9.3 protons per cubic centimeter. Let's take a look at the magnetic data next. There are your GOES magnetometers over the past 3 days. Nothing to write home about there, just a normal operating range of the GOES magnetometers. And next, the top view ecliptic plane field plot, which needs to be refreshed once again today because reasons. There is the heliospheric current sheet. The plasma that comes out of the sun is polar, and Earth is in a south pole current sheet. There is a north pole current sheet headed this way. As you can see that accelerating in this direction in green. The North Pole current sheet is on the way. Next, our line of sight field plot. Solar B field shown here in blue, north solar polar field in green, south solar polar field in red, which brings us to our coronal hole section. We've got a new one rotating in here in the southeast. It is of south pole orientation. It's fairly well defined. You can see it there in red in the southeast, which would be your lower left. And here it is from SDO. South solar polar field still hanging out pretty close to the south solar polar region. Another indication that solar cycle 25 has a long way to go to solar maximum. The reason I say that is because some people are claiming that we're already at solar maximum, that it's a grand solar minimum, that it's very, very scary and spooky. I'm not seeing it. There is very little, slim to no evidence backing up their wild, outlandish claims. Next, we'll move to sunspots. And again, there are a lot of sunspots. As we stated yesterday, we're all the way up to 3,166 now. And of course, the sunspots I cited that would get names yesterday indeed did. That's 3164, 3165, and 3166. Most likely place for a major flare, in my opinion, is now from 3153 as it sets. Also, these groups in the north are nothing to shake a stick at. Let's take a look at some more imagery. Again, likelihood of X-class flares very high now, as well as M-class flares, as those major sunspot groups approach the limb. Large flares, our regular viewers are well aware, are more likely to occur close to the limb than in the center of the solar disk, an indication that solar flares are anisotropic, meaning that they appear at a different intensity depending on the viewing angle. So here we've added 171 angstroms to add a little bit of liveliness. And let's zoom back out. So the western limb definitely is ripe for some major flares. We've got some huge filaments like the Bagashov filament and the Musk filament setting in the southwest, Bagashov filament setting in the northwest. Let's subtract the 171 angstroms. Lots of sunspots, high likelihood of major solar flares. Let's move to energetic particles next. No major spikes in the proton flux there, just some minor little increases on the GOES 16 that greater than or equal to 10 mega electron volt proton flux. And there's the X-ray flux here, pretty much underperforming with the number of sunspots we have and the magnetic complexity of those sunspots. We have had a little bit of an increase here in the background X-ray profile since yesterday, as we're very close to a sea level background X-ray flux. Let's take a look at 94 angstroms from SDO. That is the past 24 hours of the closest star, Helios, aka the Sun, the local yellow dwarf, El Sol, whatever you'd like to call it today. And let's orient ourselves here with a star chart. So I like to use in-the-sky.org. This chart is the all-sky chart. This is what's going on over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Moonset is a thing. I believe that's actually Mars. I'm clicking it. It's not working. I'm clicking it. I promise you, nothing's happening. Anyway, we've got the moon and Mars up there near the ecliptic. That's what's going on overhead over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, our location. And here's what's going on in the solar system today on 12/12, the 12th day of Smashmas. And happy Smashmas, by the way. We will have the 12th track out. You'll have no less than a dozen new pieces of music to check out. Check our playlists at youtube.com/smashomash. Here's your solar system forecast. In 1 week, we will have a crescent waning moon. As we approach new moon, it'll be a cold night, a cold, dark night. As we approach the solstice, as the solstice will be near to new moon. And next, let's take a look at some coronagraphs. There have been some CMEs, coronal mass ejections. Are they headed in our direction? Well, in short, the answer is no. That was yesterday. Here's today. 28 more frames. Once again, likelihood of coronal mass ejections that are headed this way, kind of high, as there are a huge number of filaments on the Earth-facing solar disk. We'll also look at Stereo A and the Soho Lasco C3 located at Lagrange 1, which is over here on your right. You can see some CMEs that we showed yesterday and so on. The data is hit or miss when it comes to Stereo A. Sometimes it's lacking the current data. Sometimes it's having the current data. At the moment, it's not doing too bad. As there is yesterday. And looks like some missing data here. Looks like it stops at just after 12 noon Universal Time yesterday, but we don't see any halos, so if any of those CMEs are earthly directed, they are minor. Continuing on, this is the last 24 hours. Let's zoom out a little bit here. And let's zoom out further, as in all the way. Not so sure if any of those CMEs are earthly directed. Again, if so, they are quite diffuse. And would only be expected to cause minor changes in the earthly solar wind. So let's continue on to look at filaments, of which, again, there are lots. So you've got the Elon Musk filament setting down here, now becoming a prominence. You've got the Eugene Bagashov filament setting up here. You've got the Zelensky filament right here. You've got the Putin filament. And then you've got the Brittany Griner filament right here. So lots of filaments. I think this one down here now needs a name as well, so feel free to name that in the comments. We've got the Musk, the Bagashov, the Griner, the Zelensky, the Putin, and this one down here in the southeast needs a name. So drop us a name for that one in the comments. Here's the last 24 in 171 angstroms. And did we already show that? We've got to bring up the 304 angstroms. There you go. There's 304 angstroms. And let's take a, that's the last 24, by the way. Let's take a look at the last 2.5 hours from the Go 16 SUVI. It's good enough to stream all day on the regs, so it's certainly good enough to show on the daily space weather videos. So that's what's going on the past couple of hours, and let's move to our bonus features segment. So charging hazards is first. Smooth sailing for satellites is the situation. That is the Satellites Community Dashboard, by the way, if you want to check that out yourself. It's one of the many features of the Space Weather Prediction Center. The GOES electron flux here coming off of its lows. So there's an indication the coronal hole high-speed stream is ending. If you look at the 7-day chart, you can see how cratered that's been throughout the coronal hole high-speed stream that we're just coming off of now. There is the forecast model expecting a modest and then a big increase in the electron flux. That is NOAA's forecast. No arguments from me there. There's the 1-year chart to put it in context. As we come off of the floor of the electron flux, we will take a look at the F layer of the ionosphere, which is, by the way, where the GOES 16 and GOES 17 measure the electron flux from their geosynchronous orbits using radiography. Here's the vibrational frequency of the F layer of the ionosphere, the bridge between Earth and space. So that's the raw data. Here is the anomalygram. That's anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. Which seems like it's playing kind of slowly. All right. I guess it's normal. I don't know. Lots of low-frequency anomalies showing up there. Continued major low-frequency anomalies here around the South Atlantic anomaly. That is the weakest point in Earth's magnetosphere. Anyway, here's the latest image. That's 11:15 Universal Time ionogram, and there's the 11:15 Universal Time anomalygram. Continuing on to our total electron content imagery. It'll show you the most likely places for GPS errors as free electrons refract your GPS signal. That's coming from about 12,500 miles of altitude where your GPS satellite's located down to your handset. That's the current map, and here's the current animation. And we still do have electrons quite far out of place here. They're usually concentrated around the equator at noon. We're having huge GPS errors over North America, for example. Also, nighttime equatorial GPS errors likely to be happening. We can expect this to become a little bit more organized as we see the electron flux increase, which is coming in the next couple of days. Closing out the space weather section with the latest intensitygram and latest colorized magnetogram, and that is simply a lot of sunspots. They're almost all beta-gamma class sunspot groups. They're magnetically complex enough to produce major flares. Again, especially keep your eye on the western limb. Both this northern area and this southern area likely to produce major flares in the coming 2 or 3 or 4 days. Huge filaments also on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. Let's close out the space weather section of the video with some more composite imagery from SDO. That is yesterday plus today in 3 wavelengths. Giving some great depth and definition to the closest star. And when you're stargazing, make sure you understand what's going on with the closest star before you're worried about what's going on in the cores of distant galaxies. Because if you don't understand the former, you're unlikely to understand the latter. So it's time to move to the meteorology segment of the video next. And by the way, thanks everybody for stargazing and earth-gazing with us. It's always exciting. We're always delighted to have you viewing. Today's featured product is Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera, our new top seller. Don't forget to enter the promo code WINTER22 to save 30% on totes and select home decor. Don't forget to refrain from pole vaulting the caldera. If you do go on a volcanic vacation, leave your vault pole at home. Check out our colorful bestseller. Our new bestseller, Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera. A message of hope and perseverance and basic common sense, which seems to be lacking a little bit in certain categories. Let us know in the comments if you think the smartphone has made people a lot less smart. If you check the links below the video, you will find a link to our Redbubble shop. The products are in order of best selling. Again, our new best sellers, Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera. Thanks to everybody who's picked up merch. Some of it is edgier than other. And we hope you're not still using Google as a verb, or believing fraudsters, or suffering from global democide. Congratulations on surviving a global pandemic so far. And welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. So help us out with clicks if you're unable or unwilling to open your cobweb-encrusted wallet. Hit us up on social media. Click our link at smashomash.com. You can find us all over social media. Shout out to Smash staff. Give Smash staff a raise by becoming a member of the Smash team or a patron, or by picking up some merch. You can find links to SureMed as well as Hemp Lucid. By the way, SureMed is not insurance. It's an association membership that affords all sorts of discounts to improve the health of its members, the American Better Health Organization. Again, welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. Press like, press subscribe, press share. Tell your friends and foes about it. And thanks for leaving a comment, Robert, a.k.a. One Audio. And let's get back to the weather on planet Earth. So we're looking at relative humidity here. This is sea level relative humidity. And we've got some interesting features here in the U.S. We've got some very dry air here in the northern Rockies. Look at that, only 21% moisture. Whereas just to the east of it, we've got 97% relative humidity. And for you non-meteorology nerds, relative humidity is when you reach dew point at 100%. So at a given atmospheric pressure and temperature, when water must condense and come out of vapor form, that's what we call 100% relative humidity, aka precipitation. So anyway, lots of high humidity air over the U.S. here at the moment. It's a moist atmosphere over the United States. Anyway, I figured I'd show one of the many features of nullschool.net. And you can see it's quite dry here over most of Australia, except in the northeastern portion. Really, you could say the eastern portion and the southeastern portion. Anyway, Australia here, mostly kind of dry. Anyway, let's move on to the wind maps. These are the surface winds of the eastern world. Looking like stormy seas in between Tasmania and New Zealand at the moment. These are the jet streams of this side of the planet. Jet streams of the Americas looking like this. And tripled up jet stream over the western Atlantic there. Surface winds are looking like this. Surface winds of the central world depicted here. And here are the jet streams of Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. And let's blast through the rest of the meteorology. Here we've got clouds and fog. It's still dark over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, but you can still use the 3.9 nanometer radiation satellite to view clouds and fog. Part of the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite. Check it out. If you're trying to look at clouds and fog at nighttime, the 3.9 nanometer radiation satellite's a good choice for you. There is the croissant Earth projected onto the NASA Lies spherical phony globe. And let's check our weather.gov map. Those orange areas, those are blizzard warnings, by the way. As additional heavy snow is on the way, we're going to show you some forecasts. There is the key. If your county or waterway are lit, click your county or waterway. From weather.gov, get your alerts. Too many to cover. And let's take a look at some forecasts. So here is the 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation forecast. It was not available during show prep, so we've got to prep it now. So this is the GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation forecast, and some heavy snows there coming to the Great Lakes region. Let me get that off screen. So this powerful low is going to form here around the Colorado-Kansas border and then move to the northeast. There's going to be some heavy weather there around places like Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama. Some heavy snow there on the tail end of that showing up in Wisconsin. Also some ice associated with that system. Again, that's your 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation forecast. Heavy snow coming to the central Rockies as well. Next, we'll show the total accumulated precipitation forecast. It is the same model, the GFS 72-hour. Total accumulated snow here is shown in inches. It looks like the heaviest snow is coming to Kansas and South Dakota, as California gets a little respite for most of the state, although the southern portion of the state showing up with some snow there in the GFS forecast. And let's move on. We did receive a little snow here in Pennsylvania yesterday, at least in Lehigh Valley. It was not measurable. It wasn't a dusting. It was what you'd call a squall or flurries. Next, another feature here of windy.com you may not be aware of, the ozone layer. Yes, you can actually look at the ozone layer. There's the ozone hole, the one around Antarctica. And if you'd like something to be frightened of, perhaps the ozone hole is something to inspire fear. Interestingly enough, there are some ozone holes here over the Western Pacific. There's a little ozone hole, pretty significant one actually. That is the least amount of ozone over the northern hemisphere. That is an ozone hole to rival the Antarctican ozone hole. Part of it's over China. Ozone hole over China. Anyway, just figured I would illustrate that, as I'm sure there's somebody out there who's willing to be frightened about ozone holes. So feel free. You can go monitor them on windy.com. They've got a free mobile app. Maybe if you're a content creator, you can frighten your viewers and convince them of nonsense. Next, our NASA GOES lightning mapper. We've got some strong lightning there in the Atlantic, also around the Gulf. Looks like no terrestrial strikes in the U.S. here at the moment. And there are those active cells in the Gulf. I think they may have lost their activity here. Looking a lot less active. Oh, there we go. There are some strikes. I stand corrected. There are some thunderstorms indeed in the Gulf, south of Pensacola and Tallahassee. Besides that, things are calm as far as the lightning front in the U.S. Some Atlantic Ocean lightning. And let's move on here because we don't want the video to be too long. This is the Doppler for the full 50 states of ALSA, the allegedly United States of America, AUSA, former nation, now Banana Republic. And here are the lower 48, which is what we will focus on for the remainder of the video. Here is clouds and fog over the lower 48. Once again, the 3.9 nanometer infrared radiation satellite. And there is the water vapor map. Some moisture just hanging out there over northeastern Colorado. Apparently all the hot air coming out of the state of Colorado is insufficient to dry up that moist air. Here's your recap, U.S. Doppler radar map. Shortwave radiation showing clouds and fog. And there is the water vapor, which should help to clear things up if your Doppler is insufficient to give you a good weather picture. Hopefully that is sufficient for your space and Earth weather inputs for the day. Thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Once again, congratulations on realizing the channel exists despite the pathetic, sickening, and putrid censorship on the internet. Make sure you press the notification bell. Receive all notifications about when we actually put up a video. Check for the 12th day of Smashmas coming out. It's Blacksmith today, later. to complete the 12 days of Smashmas. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, and may that solar wind be at your back. Opinions expressed in this video not necessarily the opinions of Smash News Network, least busted name in news.